Yeah, are we good? Cool. Okay, so I thought I'd prepare for this talk as much as possible, so I got it all done a few days early, and I left my power cord at home. So I borrowed a laptop, so things might go wrong. Let's just see. So yes, my name is Tameem Antoniades. I'm the creative director at Ninja Theory. And 1 year ago in Cologne, at GDC, I did a talk called the Independent AAA Proposition, which was a theory of a new model of development that we wanted to try out. I don't know if any of you guys were here for that talk. Could we have a quick show of hands? Okay, quite a few, great. So now we're a year in, and so I want to give you an update of how it's gone. We're about to enter the full production phase of the project, so the jury is still out as to whether the independent AAA model will work or not, but you could say I'm quietly confident at this stage. Just for those who don't know us very well, we're what I would call a mid-sized development, a console developer. We're based in Cambridge, England, and we're working on several projects. And some of them are large projects, and Hellblade, in this instance, is a very small one. So over the past 15 years or so, we've created about 5 console titles, and we've collaborated with Avalanche Studios and Disney on Disney Infinity 2 and 3. So we are effectively in the AAA console space. Myself, I've been making games for 20 years, 15 years of which is at Ninja Theory as a programmer, designer, and now creative director. So I've seen a few shifts in the industry that are quite big, and I feel like the digital transition is going to be the biggest one yet. And so for many people, digital means alternative models. So it might mean free to play or indie or mobile or new genres like MOBAs. But I'm here to really promote a model that I think has been largely absent, which we call independent AAA, for lack of a better term. It means doing what we're good at, what we're used to, what we're experienced at, high production values, but with the independence and ethos of indie development. And our new game, Hellblade, is going to be released sometime in 2016, and it represents our first attempt at this model. So, to summarize why we're wanting to explore different models, I'll very briefly cover what the model is and move on. I think the AAA retail model, there's nothing wrong with it per se. You get fantastic games that come out, but effectively every game is a blockbuster. It's like if there was a movie industry where every movie was an Avengers movie or a spin-off. And it's not good for developers that are smaller in scale. Largely, these are games that are done by internal studios that scale up to 100, 200, 300 people. And one of the questions I always had is why is this the case? And the best answer I can come up with is that it comes down to the price point of games. Like the retail model is think of it like a grumpy old grandpa that doesn't want to change his ways. It's got to cost 60 euros or $60 or however much it is, and that's that. And it's got to be that way because it's always been that way. And so games have to compete on size. They compete on features, and they have blow-by-blow features in each subsequent game, and this has resulted in what I think is an enormous checklist. I think this is what you have to do these days to pitch a AAA game. You have to cover all these bases before you can even think about what is unique about the game. It's a strategy I call the go big, go home, which someone from, I think, EA once told me. So it's no coincidence that we are seeing fewer and bigger games succeed, many of which actually do seem quite similar to each other. So, this is a little bit of a sad slide. This is from 2006 to 12, so it's not even current, but it's hundreds of developers have disappeared over the last few years. very good developers as well. Not all of them because they made bad games. In some cases, that's true. But in other cases, they just don't fit into this model. And if I was to highlight some of my favorite games, of a few years ago, I don't think any one of these games would be published these days under the retail model. They just simply don't have enough to them to compete with the big franchises that are out there today. And I feel like, you can call it survival of the fittest, but I really think evolution never really was survival of the fittest. It was survival of the most adaptable. And when the model is not adapting, then these studios, they die because they don't fit into a particular model of the industry. So, I do think that digital gives us an opportunity to reverse this trend somewhat, to revive games that have been off our radar for a long time. A lot of teams that have gone away, there were teams that were functioning well together, really experienced people that knew how to work together and knew how to craft amazing experience. And those teams have been split up. And in most cases, they're not going to get back together. So I think there is a loss there. But I also think that there's a lot of promise still to come. So this is where I see the independent AAA model, for us at least. On the one hand, you've got indie games, which are where I'd say most of the innovations are coming from these days. Most of the interesting concepts are coming through from the indie scene. And on the other hand, you've got the big franchises that are AAA in quality. I'd like to try and find a space in between this. We want to make games that look stunning, that we're known for our storytelling, art, and production values, and we want to keep that. But simply put, we do want to make games that are smaller and more focused. So hence the phrase, half the size, half the cost. And size can be length of game, or it could be the feature set that you have in the game. It's kind of open to interpretation. But the idea is, we're used to buying stuff for about 25, 30, 40 euros, T-shirts and DVDs and Blu-rays and things. So I don't really understand why we impose such a big financial commitment of our players. Right, so I think the idea perpetuated that you must go big or go home, I think of it as a fallacy. And I think that fallacy has been proved wrong when the indie scene started to blossom. Of course, some of these games were amazing, and of course they sold, and of course they found an audience. Now the story goes that you can either be indie, super low budget, or AAA, and there's nothing in the middle. That's a perpetuated statement of fact by a lot of people, a lot of publishers, and I simply do not believe it. So we want to chuck out as much of the baggage that really comes with AAA retail and focus on the areas that we love as a studio. An affecting character journey, stunning art, and some great action. So which brings us to Hellblade. So given that independent AAA is about creating diverse games, you should consider this as simply one case study. It's the only one I know. So although the game, a lot of what I talk about is specific to Hellblade, I think you should take the ethos forward to whatever games you may be making or considering. And right now, we've just finished a vertical slice demo of the game, and from that we made a trailer. So I'd like to show you the trailer so you know what we're talking about.
This darkness is a disease, a rot that takes hold and spreads to every part of me. And I fear I will follow in your footsteps. I am alone and scared. I beg for your guidance. Before the darkness
Few would brave such a desperate journey into darkness, but it isn't bravery that drives cinema. Only those afraid of death would use such terms. Senua's fear runs far deeper.
They know you're weak. Get up and fight. You're pathetic.
Control the fear. Let it pass through. Remember his words.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. So I want to cover a little bit about the model itself and how we're going about doing it and how we came to this conclusion. So this chart has various budgets for AAA retail games that are not uncommon. Usually independent developers are at the bottom of the food chain, or rather developers in general are at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to the royalties and upside. Retailers come first, distributors, platform holders, publishers, they all take their cut. And then once they've all taken their cut, then the developer has to repay the development fees plus a percentage. So that's why it's very difficult. It's a very difficult business for an independent developer to make royalties on. In effect, we're like the post industry in films. We survive project to project, and there's the chance of a breakout hit, but it's very unlikely. I mean, I've heard it's less than 5% of games make royalties for the developer. I don't even know if it's that high, to be perfectly frank. So in order to make a go of it, we want to compete by undercutting AAA price points by half. For a small fry developer like us, that means digital distribution, where we can cut out as many of the middlemen as possible. But the digital market is just not as big as the retail market. There's not as many people on there, at least on the console side. And it's very difficult to get figures of how many people are out there. People generally don't seem to share those figures. So what we did was we thought, okay, what's a reasonable best estimate of a break-even, like in terms of sales? Say we do it at half the price of AAA. What's a good estimate? And so we came up with 300,000 units across multiple platforms. It's tough, but it's achievable. You know, it feels like it's a good, ambitious number to go for. So the price with the break-even suggests a very low budget, probably comparable to a high-end indie budget, and nowhere near a AAA standard. So but there is an advantage to digital, which means you have a longer tail. So I think that there is some other things that we can play to our advantage. So a budget of about 15 people for 2 years is what it equates to. This is far lower than the kind of development team size we have been used to, and it's incomparable to the team sizes you are seeing in this current generation. And it didn't seem possible or feasible to try and hit AAA quality with 15 people, but there was reason for optimism. I mean, tools have been getting a lot better. I mean, Unity, UE4, productivity, the experience of the team, like, we seem to be getting a lot faster. Heavenly Sword took nearly 5 years to make. When we did DMC, we did it with half the people in half the time. And so I think, so we simply don't know what a small, well, we simply didn't know what a smaller team was capable of achieving. So I would say take this slide a little bit with a pinch of salt. It might be optimistic thinking. It's not very scientific. But let's start with the assumption that you need about 100 people to make a current AAA game. Let's say you reduce the scope of the game by half. Let's say that reduces your development size by 30%. I mean, not 50 because there's always fixed costs. So you've got 70 people left. And when you're working with a publisher, there's always changes and feedback. And I estimate that it's probably about 15% of development time is spent rearranging the project to suit the publisher's need. I'm not being mean or nasty. I think the publisher has to respond to what their audience wants, and you have to respond to the publisher. So that figure comes down. Now, let's say you use middleware like Unity or UE4, and you say to your team, don't change anything. All right, change one thing, but don't change anything else, and you stick to it. I think it is possible to save, like there's an enormous saving to be made there. It's pretty much the approach we're taking on Hellblade. There's 3 programmers on the team. And for the first 6 months or so, there were no programmers on the team. Management overheads, this includes things like managers, producers, communication in general. Like there's a lot of inefficiencies that can be saved there. So you see where I'm going with this. Like eventually, it's not that unreasonable to arrive at a number like 15. Obviously, I've massaged the figures to reach at 15 because isn't that convenient? But the point is made. At the bigger the team sizes, you start to come up against resistance, air resistance, and the more you put in, the less you get out. So what does a team look like? Now, things we found. So in a 15-man team, it's sort of meaningless to have the concept of hierarchy, leads and bosses. I mean, when you've got one guy making the art for the whole of the world, what's the point of calling him a lead? Or rather, actually, we call everyone a lead because everyone's in charge of their area. So in our team, there was a little bit of an epiphany partway through that everyone's a lead. No one has managerial authority over each other. Everyone has different responsibilities. So I have a creative direction responsibility as an art director. But that doesn't make me, or I'd like to think, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the people's boss and I have to tell them off when they come in late. I don't really care how people arrange and do their work, as long as we're all stepping together and we do it out of a place of mutual respect and trust. So we do rely on experience, ambition, and resourceful inventiveness of every member of the team to come up with solutions to old development problems. And it really did take a while. It took 9 months, maybe, 9 months to a year for people to kind of settle into this kind of way of thinking that you really do have to take responsibility and you really do have to do things off your own back. And there has been shuffling of the team. There have been people that have joined the team that left the team, that it didn't suit them. And one of the reasons is that everyone on the team has to effectively do a couple of different jobs, 2 or 3 different jobs. So you need polymaths. And the industry has been specializing people. We've been focused on specializing people into very narrow disciplines. And it's tough to then ask that person, we also need you to do this and the other, when they don't have much experience or knowledge in that area. So we have wound up with 15 people that are very experienced. It's turned out that way. Okay. So I want to give you a good example of how limits can drive innovation and solutions in our approach to building environment art in this case. So there's one environment artist, Dan, and he's in charge of creating the whole of the world of Helheim, which is the setting of the game. And it's a large world, that's a mere section of it. So he started to research ways of building the world with kit parts, which isn't new, building worlds with kit parts, but strangely something we've never really done before. Looking at things like decals and different methods of using the same decals across large areas, finding ways of creating procedurally generated content, or in this case, blueprints. Writing blueprints, Dan's very technical, so that makes the job of populating the world a lot easier. Finding new ways of creating texture maps that may involve some procedural texture maps, some of it's modeled, some of it's hand-drawn, and combining them in ways that look rich and don't look like the world's full of repeated patterns. We've just got a 3D scanner, a handheld 3D scanner, that we're using to also scan real-world objects. And so the first year of development, the first, well, maybe 9 months, has been spent prototyping across the whole of the game. Because when you do this, you come to the realization that you can't just design a game and then ask 15 people to make it. You have to work out what those 15 people are capable of. And this is another example, more of a team effort. This is how do you do performance capture? Performance capture is something that we're known for. We did it, our first game was Heavenly Sword. We shot it in Weta, at Weta in New Zealand. And it's the capturing of face, body, voice, and cameras all at the same time. So the idea is that if a scene feels good on set, you've already got all the data you need to turn it into the final form. And it's something that even AAA studios these days don't do because it's seen as complex or costly. So when we buy, we've cobbled together, we've prototyped a lot, and we've failed a lot with a lot of our prototypes. And we've bought, a lot of our setup is stuff we've bought from Maplin Electronics, IKEA, Amazon. And we've tackled every stage of the kind of process, from body capture, face, voice, cameras, 3D scanning, created our own little prototype devices like this. So this is a plant pot with some LED lights, and with it you can capture skin details like surface, like wrinkles and things. So it actually turns out that it's quite fun when you start doing this stuff, and half of it didn't work, but half of it did. And we're using that. So the cutscenes I'm going to show you in a bit is shot in our main meeting room with that equipment. Right. So like, it's all well and good to say, yes, you can do it with 15 people for 2 years, but that's still expensive. That's still a few $1 million or euros. How do you get the money to do that? So a year and a half ago or so, when we were showing Hellblade around, there really isn't much. There really isn't much in the way of a model to fund this. We went to publishers, but publishers, their policy is generally to own IP. So that straight away, that's the first question we would ask. Is your policy to own IP? Yes. Okay. So there's also Kickstarter. About this time, Kickstarter started to get some negative press, and we didn't want to go down that road because we feel like the only thing that we own, that we carry from our previous games, is the following that we have from our fans and gamers. So we didn't want to try and prove an unproven model and kind of risk the goodwill of the only really tangible thing we do have. So we made a choice to not go down the Kickstarter route. It might be something that we do in future, but I want to feel confident that we can actually pull this off. Early access is another thing that came up, and it wasn't for us, not in a story game. We can't put out a broken story. We don't want to. It's the thing that we don't want to give away any spoilers. It's not for us. So where did we get the money? I mean, Some of it was savings, like a good chunk of it was just savings that we've had in the bank. We took out some, like a good sizable loan, which we'll have to pay back. We've managed to get some grant money, which has been very useful. More on that in a sec. In the UK, there's a 20% tax break, and that certainly helps. But another thing you can do is when you're going to service providers, maybe it's outsourced houses or localization or whatever, a lot of these studios actually would prefer to get a back-end deal, a percentage of your royalties, rather than a front-end payment. It's something publishers don't generally do for service providers, but for us it helps. It helps enormously. And in terms of additional SKUs and DLC and expansion, with this long tail of digital, I think it's more reasonable to put off those costs and bootstrap them as the game comes out. So hence we're targeting 2 platforms initially, PlayStation 4 and PC. But we will hope to take it onto more platforms. And then lastly, there's a shop. We're putting our finishing touches to a shop. We've never sold anything directly. So that's going online, and we'll see how that goes. We're going to sell T-shirts and all the usual stuff you might get on a Kickstarter program. And we will consider that bonus money. So any money we make there, we'll stick it back into the game. So for us, like doing something like this is risky. So the part of what we want to do is to stick to what we know who our audience is, do the things that people like in us. But having said that, I also don't think that if you're going to do something like this, a smaller cut down game, it's not enough to say, remember those games that we did? Well, here's a little cut down version of it. Hey, that's not a selling point. You have to find something better to offer. And you think, well, how do you make something better for much less? And I think this draws analogies with movies, independent movies. I mean, you wouldn't say that something like Drive or Black Swan or whatever, Memento, whatever your favorite indie movie is any better than, you wouldn't say that those movies are worse than Avengers, Age of Ultron, would you? It's different experiences, and you could argue that they're better. They are better. But that's not to say that big budget movies can't be great as well. It's just, in gaming, there sort of isn't that equivalent. A game that looks like a AAA game, but is got that indie kind of feel, that's got that independent movie kind of thematic gravitas. So as you saw in the trailer, I mean, we touched on the idea of mental health, mental illness, and so why did we pick that? I mean, I think gaming is unlike any other medium in the sense that you can engage an individual's undivided attention for hours at a time, and players can embody the main character, making choices, taking action. I mean, this is what makes gaming such a powerful medium. And it's a tool through which you can see the world through another person's eyes. And we don't often really exploit that. So the mental health theme came because I was interested in the subject. I have a personal interest in the subject. I've got a personal interest in the mind, creativity. It's stuff I do outside of games. I like reading up on that stuff. And it led me to reading about psychosis and schizophrenia. And I wondered, like maybe a lot of people might do, like when that person's talking to nothing, do they actually see someone? So I went to find out. I read about it. I saw videos that represent what it's like. And it's truly, truly shocking, but also amazing that our brains can create such fantastical concepts, imagery, and belief systems that make someone believe that there's a demon in their room and see them that's staring at them at night, or that you can hear someone shouting at you, speaking to you, a voice 24 hours a day, and you can't stop it and control it. So I wanted to find out more, and I thought games is a good medium to do this. And I felt like it's a taboo subject, and it doesn't need to be. A lot of people get help, a lot of people recover, a lot of people deal with it. It shouldn't be a taboo when I would pretty much bet that everyone in this room has been touched by it, either directly or indirectly, at some point in their lives. So one way to get over a taboo is to make it public, to talk about it. Obviously, incredibly nervous about putting out that trailer and kind of announcing that the theme is serious mental health conditions. The response has been as good as we possibly could have wanted or imagined. It feels like there's a lot of gamers that are familiar with mental health issues, and they saw this as a game that acknowledges what it's like, or acknowledges their struggles, if you like. And where it's not all been positive, some people have been negative, they felt offended, really offended by the fact that we're taking a subject like that and making a game out of it. Many times when people have expressed that on comments, YouTube comments or whatever, others have jumped in and say, well, actually, I'm in this camp, and I think that it's a good thing to try and tackle. People have got in touch with us directly about it, and we've responded directly to them. We've engaged with them. We want to know what they're worried about. We want to know if they'll tell us what their experience is, and we're being very open and sincere about our communication on this front. So I'd say for now, we've been given the benefits of the doubt, and it's something that we have to understand, that this isn't a free pass to do whatever we want. So early on in development, we contacted a psychiatrist and professor of, his name is Paul Fletcher. He's a psychiatrist and professor of health neuroscience at Cambridge University, and he was fascinated by the potential of games. He came to the studio, talked to us. He presented the latest scientific or neurological model of the mind. He related what people's experiences are like. He produced research papers and condensed them down in a way we could understand. And he's been involved for a few months, coming into the office, looking at what we're doing, giving us advice. And Senua is largely, the main protagonist, Senua, is largely a character that's formed because of his input. And so I'd like to show the cutscene that a test cutscene that we shoot to try and represent some of that.
I'm not turning back. It took months to get here. Well, maybe, but I made my promise.
You will die.
We'll all die someday.
It's getting dark.
I'll continue tomorrow.
You're afraid of the dark.
I'm being patient.
Getting closer to him.
I hope so.
You sure it's safe here?
Yes. Nobody followed us.
Be careful.
I know. I just wish I could rest a little. Shh. Someone's here.
They know you're weak. Get up and fight. You're pathetic.
Control the fear. Let it pass through. Remember his word.
Find the light that lights your straight behind the ground.
Open your eyes.
So there's one charity has helped us enormously. It's a charity called the Wellcome Trust, which possibly you've not heard of, but it's second biggest charity in the world after Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I think they give out something like $1 billion a year for research, but also a portion of that is given to movies, arts, and games for projects that try to further the understanding and science of it. So they gave us a very small grant at the beginning, and that allowed us to work deeper with Professor Paul Fletcher and create that cutscene. But since then, we've received a larger award, and this was this helped us enormously. And what they offer is like what they want us to do is to make an entertaining, compelling experience, a game. And what they want and what they think they can help us with is to try and represent the experiences of peoples and the theories behind and the scientific theories behind it in a truthful way. So for us, it's a win-win. It's good research. It means we can make a more believable character and a more believable experience and world. And because of their backing, we now have, it's easier for us to kind of approach mental health organizations and charities. So one of the things we've done recently is we met with a group of service users who have had very serious psychotic experiences in the past or currently. And we showed them our vertical slice and played through it with them. And they gave us feedback on how their experiences relate to it or how it doesn't relate to it. And they gave us a lot of encouragement to continue forward. And they were very excited. And they were actually it was a really nice experience. They were very excited and thrilled to be involved. And we're going to continue to be involved with them intermittently for the next year. So really, Wellcome has opened up doors to us that we otherwise wouldn't have had open. And Ian I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his surname. Ian Doggedon, I think it is the Creative Partnerships Manager. And they're on the lookout for games that try and further the understanding of science or health. So it's worth looking into if that's an area you're working in. Okay, so one thing we did after our meeting with the service users is to try and put some of their thoughts and experiences into the game, like rapid prototyping. Try and figure out if we can represent what they see and hear better. So what we have here is a video that shows some quotes, some statements made from some of the group, but also from a wider range of feedback that Professor Paul gave us. And where we're at. I mean, we've only been doing this for a couple of weeks now, so it's something we're very excited about. We want to push forward as far as we can.
Hands will know my heart is so, love is so far away. Don't you know how I wanna feel deeper? I could never know how you grow, all these days are killing me. Now I see deep in me insanity does unfold. I just wanna feel deeper, deeper. I just wanna feel deeper. far away. Don't you know how I wanna feel deeper? I could never know how you grow. All these days are killing me. Feel like this, read like this. I just wanna live, that's all. I just wanna feel deeper, deeper. I just wanna feel deeper, deeper.
So I personally can't wait to kind of keep doing this and showing it back to the group and getting people's points of view and getting their feedback. And what came out of some of those meetings is the flip side to the kind of the more horrific side of things that we're used to seeing. The idea that sometimes it can be stunningly beautiful, and it's you know, for some service users, they wouldn't change a thing. So the final part of our strategy is open development. So even if we're able to make a compelling game and complete it under the independent AAA model, there really still is a high chance of commercial failure if we can't raise awareness. And like most indies, you know, we have a negligible marketing and PR budget. And so this is partly why we're being open about our development. And the way we're doing this is we've released 13 video diaries so far, one per month, each around 7 to 9 minutes long, to show people how we're making Hellblade. And we do these in-house. It's not expensive. It's someone with a Canon camera and a microphone and a copy of Vegas, and it's each episode's covering a different topic, and it's got a loyal following now, and it's something we hope to build over the months. And as well as that, we're doing Q&A and social media. With the press, we're letting them just come and visit us. So there's very little that we are hiding from the press. In fact, the only thing we're hiding from the press is the actual story itself. So they have access to the full team. They can talk to anyone unsupervised, whoever they want on the team, and we're confident that they come away feeling impressed, but also they come away with something different each time because they each come at different points in development. And it's resulted in a few game covers. I think that's been quite remarkable for a game, for us anyway, for a game being so early in development. So, I mean, what we want to achieve with this whole thing is, first and foremost, we want to make a great game. I mean, we're in it for that. And we want to offer a new experience, something that we haven't created before and gamers haven't experienced before. So really, this does mean striving for financial independence so that we can strive for creative independence. And we hope that being open will inspire other developers like us, or students, or you know, whoever's out there, to help make gaming a more diverse and exciting space. We have nothing to gain by being secretive about it. Nothing to lose by being secretive about it. And so far, we've gained a lot from being open about it in terms of support. People like Sony, Epic, Vicon, NVIDIA, all of them feel sorry for us in some ways, I guess you could say, and have supported us in various manners. And I think that and I think actually, you know, part of the reason they're helping us is because they want to see a bigger ecosystem. Vicon want to see their low-end motion capture equipment used by more developers, not just the high-end things. You know, everyone's got an interest in there being more games, more exciting games, made by more people. We're not taking away anything from AAA publishing. We're not taking anything away from the indie scene. Like, we just want to create a full, rich landscape of gaming. And we do that by being open about it, because it's no good us just saying, yeah, for a few $1 million and 13 or 15 people, you can make games. We want to show also how we're doing it. And it might not work, and if it doesn't work, there'll be someone out there that looks at us and goes, well, that's where you went wrong. We'll do it better. And that's fine. You know, there's a high risk of embarrassment and failure of being open, but I think there's an even bigger risk of being closed. So with that, I mean, if you do want to follow Hellblade and what's going on, it's easy to find out. But thank you very much for your time, and this being the last session of the day. We probably have time for a few questions if anyone would like to ask them. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, it's the first time I heard of the game. And can you describe a little bit more the sort of mental illnesses the protagonist is suffering?
Okay. So, yes, okay. So what kind of mental illnesses does she have? So what's important to say is that this is a journey not about mental illness. It's a journey about Senua with her particular affliction, because it's different for everyone. So with that, we've modeled it on cases of psychosis. So you could say there's symptoms like hallucinations, visual and oral hallucinations, anxiety, and there's a whole, a term like schizophrenia. I'd hesitate myself to say she has schizophrenia, because it's a diagnostic term that actually it means a collection of symptoms, and it can include hallucinations, anxiety, depression. It can include a whole series of things. Yep. Yep. Another question over there.
I was wondering, you mentioned you were a middling studio of like 115 people, but you only have 15 people working on Hellblade right now.
Yeah.
So once you succeed, because let's say that you will succeed, because we want you to.
Thank you.
Do you see transitioning into like 7 parallel teams all doing this sort of smaller scale projects?
I don't know. I mean, when you're working on a big in the big AAA space, you have a lot of people dedicated to that, and that's great because you've got secure employment for a lot of people, but you're only one green light away from losing that. And I want to make sure that we have a backup. Like, I want to make sure that we create some projects that we own. I'd like to repeat it, is the short answer, and I think probably the best strategy is to have a balance of the two. Any other questions? Let's see. There's one hand up right at the back and another one in between.
Hi. The art style that you've chosen, is that a conscious decision in terms of one person being able to create that world, rather than the kind of, let's say, a more modern setting? Was that something that's conscious because of the constraints of the project, or is it more just to do with the narrative itself?
Yeah, so I would say the art style is, it's more influenced from our past games. So games like Heavenly Sword and Enslaved. I wanted to create a fantasy setting. It's kind of our heritage, but I didn't want to go down the tropes of Lord of the Rings and things like that. And I see the mind as the ultimate creator of fantasies. So in essence, the game feels real, like it feels like a historical piece. It's a Celtic warrior going to Norway, fighting a war. But the fantastical elements come from her own mind. So everything is pretty dark and grim and real in that sense. If by real you mean present-day reality, I prefer fantasy because I think with fantasy you can get away with dropping people's prejudices in a way. You know, you can approach subjects that in our environment we immediately put up barriers and say, well, you know, we've already got our barriers up, and I think fantasy can do that. You know, like George Orwell's 1984 and George Romero's Dawn and Day of the Dead. Like, these are fantasies that let you see the world differently, and I like that. It's one step removed. Okay, we've got another question there.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. I actually wanted to ask you the question regarding the management, that there is the team management question. So in every team there are sometimes, you know, like argues in a good way on something. So how to come to a conclusion in the team where, you know, like everybody is responsible for his part and.
So you have a team that
you showed the scheme of your team of 15 people. Everybody is responsible for his own part.
Yes.
But if sometimes, well, in every team, sometimes there are argues on something like a project. How do you resolve them?
If they're arguing against it or something like that. So if in a small team someone doesn't want to play ball or there's arguments and stuff. I mean, I don't have a solution. Like, I think when people argue, and it turns, and people do argue, like sometimes, and I speak to them. It's never. I don't sit them in a room together and tell them what's what. Like, everyone's a responsible adult, and they've got to work out a way to work together. Like, and. As long as everyone has a good intention, it works. If somebody fights against a model that says, I don't believe this can work, there's no way, I haven't found a solution to that. And inevitably, it leads to them not being on the project. I'm not a producer. I'm not a particularly good manager, I would say, as well. Like, I don't know if there's a better way to deal with it, but I haven't found a better way, is the honest answer. Okay, let's take one more, and then we're done, and we can go for some beers. Hello.
Okay, no, it doesn't. You mentioned that your system should be a role model for upcoming projects and other publishers. But your team has got a huge experience in making video games, and you've got specialists working on the game. How could this kind of a system work with indie gamers who don't have that much experience? Or, yeah.
I think what makes independent projects interesting is the subject, is the theme, it's the hook. In our case, there's a very clear story-based, character-based differentiator, you could say. In other games, it's more mechanics-based. And I think with projects like, with platforms like UE4 and Unity, you can make absolutely stunning, beautiful art without having to go for realism. I think the aesthetic is important, but it doesn't have to be an aesthetic that demands that level of detail and work in it. We're doing that because it's one of our advantages of being experienced, so we're throwing every advantage we have out there. But I don't think this game could be said, for example, you couldn't say that this game is more beautiful than Journey. You know, so there's a difference between the aesthetic and the production values that are needed to go, the production that needs to go into it. But make the idea special is the cool thing. All right, well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.